WWE, it obviously is Samoa Joe. How can you go a year like 2016 without someone like Samoa Joe with the impression that he's left us with from NXT, feuding with the likes of Prince Pretty, of course, Tyler Breeze. That really wasn't doing much for him. I think he's really in line for a call-up in WWE, especially when you've got names on your resume having worked with the likes of Sting, Jeff Jarrett, Kurt Angle. I mean, he's involved in so many great matches over the years in TNA Wrestling, on the Independents, so obviously he has a tremendous amount of experience. One of my all-time favorite Samoa Joe moments was seeing that Triple Threat Ultimate X match in TNA with AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels. Samoa Joe got a couple of victories over those guys, but I mean, he really brought the best out of himself and both AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels in those incredible matches. They had several sequels to their initial one, and one of my all-time favorite moments in programs seeing Samoa Joe involved with had to have been that one, and that really is a testament, in my opinion, just to how good Samoa Joe really is. If you haven't already figured it out, guys, I am a huge Samoa Joe fan. Hopefully they'll keep the name Samoa Joe on him when he crosses over from NXT to WWE. Of course, in NXT, they're referring to him as Samoa Joe, so they're keeping the TNA name and accolade with him, but with his character coming over from NXT now to WWE, well, they want to repackage Samoa Joe like they have wanted to do with so many TNA wrestlers over the years who've come in with so much hype initially from TNA to WWE, hoping they were going to have something done with their characters. Another name that just jumped into the back of my mind was Chris Harris, Wildcat Chris Harris. Remember how they changed his name almost instantly and they didn't really give him a chance in WWE? I had the chance to speak with so many former WWE alumni who were from TNA, and they were so disappointed. They wanted to go back to TNA Wrestling. Some of them did, to ultimately achieve success. I know Gail Kim was someone who went back and forth from WWE to TNA, back and forth all the time, because they were trying to find happiness. And I think that was one of the biggest things about TNA Wrestling, and this has been the biggest thing about TNA Wrestling for forever, is the fact that so many wrestlers who say were with WWE who never got a push, who never got really utilized to their fullest potential, like someone like Marcus Corvan, ultimately after going to TNA Wrestling, they found happiness. Kurt Angle was another one. Of course, that was a big announcement several years ago when Kurt Angle had left WWE for TNA Wrestling, and they made that announcement at No Surrender a couple of years ago. He was someone who ultimately found happiness. The Dudley Boys were people who found happiness in the way of tag team wrestling. Remember Team 3D? WWE have had this habit of destroying TNA wrestlers, probably because of a personal grudge the McMahons have had against Jerry and Jeff Jarrett for years, the Jarrett family, for starting up this enterprise. But I think really what WWE needs to do is they really need to start a trend, and they could start this with Samoa Joe and start giving TNA wrestlers and legends the benefit of the doubt, because without a doubt, Samoa Joe is a legend. If he isn't already, he's getting pretty close to being considered a legend. He's one of the gods of professional wrestling, in my opinion. Anytime you can work with the likes of Jeff Jarrett, Kurt Angle, and Sting, and actually defeat legends like that so early in your career at a young age, I mean, you really cemented your legacy. And I don't think Samoa Joe really needs to be with WWE to cement his legacy. And Samoa Joe is a guy, in my opinion, who WWE should really give everything to. They should have given everything to Sting. They didn't. And they're probably not going to give everything to Samoa Joe. But when it comes to guys like Sting and Samoa Joe, these are guys who you really need to give everything to, because you've waited years for the opportunity to sign these guys. If you didn't see opportunity with someone like Samoa Joe, why did you ever sign someone like Samoa Joe to a WWE developmental contract and put him on NXT? Obviously, you put him on NXT with a purpose, and I think not by putting him on WWE, you're defeating that purpose you initially saw with someone like Samoa Joe. If you got him on NXT to push superstars like Tyler Breeze, because if you do have him on NXT pushing superstars like Tyler Breeze, obviously it's working. So carry over that same philosophy from NXT to WWE and have him put over superstars who are on the new talent roster, even if you got to put him in a match with Dolph Ziggler to introduce himself to WWE. Put him in a program with Ziggler and eventually transition Samoa Joe into a bigger level and a bigger platform for him to perform on. It wouldn't surprise me none if Samoa Joe made his WWE debut the night after WrestleMania. Let's say Triple H is celebrating a title victory over Roman Reigns, which a lot of people think is what's going to be the derivement from this year's WrestleMania, given everything that's happened over the last couple of months with every wrestler that's ended up on the DL over the last 6 months. Randy Orton, Sting, Seth Rollins, so many others. wrestlers wanting time off, like John Cena, who recently returned, and there's also an speculation that we're going to be seeing Nikki Bella returning really soon for the Divas Revolution to rekindle the remnants of what happened with that Team Bella going their separate ways. So obviously she's going to take over the responsibility of that. With so many wrestlers on the DL or wanting time off, I think that Samoa Joe debuting the night after WrestleMania could possibly happen regardless of who the champion is. Even if it is Roman Reigns, we could see either Samoa Joe versus Roman Reigns or Triple H versus Samoa Joe, which would be a fucking awesome match because we've never seen Samoa Joe versus Triple H. If you want to make Samoa Joe into a bigger name and you want to make someone like Triple H really stand out and contemplate retirement from COO and wrestling all the time, then you put him in a program with Samoa Joe, because we really need something different happening in professional wrestling. I mean, who the fuck really wants to see, and I'm being very blunt and very frank with this, who the fuck wants to see Triple H versus Roman Reigns this year for WrestleMania when you could offer us something ultimately better like Triple H versus Samoa Joe? A match that's been a dream match for years, a match that people have wanted for forever. Why not finally give it to us? If you're not going to give us Sting versus Undertaker because of injuries and different circumstances that have unfolded over the last couple of months and become very apparent, why not give us something like Triple H versus Samoa Joe? Because any match over Roman Reigns versus Triple H would ultimately get bigger ratings and better morale for WWE. If you're looking to boost the credibility of WWE, the best way of doing it is to get those creative juices flowing and write something creatively when it comes to people like Samoa Joe making their WWE debut the night after WrestleMania and Triple H, who could be champion. Another scenario people are thinking about is possibly Triple H coming into WrestleMania as champion. Here comes Sting to avenge his loss from WrestleMania back in 2015. A lot of people think that's the way it's going to go. But I think, Samoa Joe's WWE debut, it wouldn't surprise me none if that happened. On a scale of 5 stars of the potential of this happening, probably you can go 3 to 5. I won't go all the way because, as I said before, WWE have a habit of mistreating and underutilizing TNA wrestlers because of a grudge they've had against TNA for years. You know, what was interesting about WWE and TNA's rivalry was Vince McMahon and the McMahon family would never acknowledge TNA wrestling. They would tease it in promos when John Cena and wrestlers would come out and say, maybe I'll jump ship and go to that other promotion without even mentioning the name of the franchise. What was really interesting, when WWE fans at live shows and TV tapings would chant TNA wrestling, Vince McMahon would not acknowledge it, but he would look very paranoid. So it was obvious and very apparent that he was really paranoid over these chants, and he's got to be still really paranoid with how much TNA wrestling is offering when it comes to tag team wrestling, women's wrestling. Their women's division has expanded beyond belief. They have exploded with potentiality for the women's division. They've got general managers of the women's division. They've got tag team titles for the women to compete for. So much more of an opportunity, and that's why their women's division has expanded so much, because more people want to go to the TNA Nuggets division than they do the Divas division. They want to go to the Divas division for the chance to be reality stars and to get a little bit of exposure. But when it comes to making name for yourself in wrestling, why not go to TNA's women's division, which ultimately is offering women more and more exposure, longer matches, more matches than just one on a TV show, which WWE are only getting around to doing now because of the third hour for Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, of course, finishing up where Raw left earlier in the week. With a 2-hour time slot, Raw and SmackDown, of course, being your biggest two, the main event on the network, NXT. Women are getting more exposure also because of 2 divisions now in WWE, but I think really what TNA was really offering wrestlers for years, and will continuously offer wrestlers for years and years to come, is the fact that they're offering wrestlers more of an opportunity. And without a doubt, Samoa Joe saw his best years of professional wrestling with TNA. Of course, he won the TNA title a number of years ago from Kurt Angle at Lockdown. I think it was Lockdown 2006. I don't know if I'm right or wrong about that. But I can remember him winning his first title at the expense of Kurt Angle. I think it was at the Lockdown pay-per-view a couple of years ago. It was an incredible match. And I think really then, that's when he solidified his legacy. And he probably had solidified his legacy long before he ever defeated Kurt Angle. Of course, Samoa Joe went so many months undefeated in TNA wrestling up to the debut of Kurt Angle, who was the first wrestler to get a victory over Samoa Joe. Again, going back not only to Samoa Joe's career in TNA wrestling, but the history he's had with so many wrestlers. Why is he even there in WWE? You got to stop and think about that for a minute, don't you? Because Samoa Joe is a name that so many people know. He's a name that is synonymous with professional wrestling. People have been saying Joe's going to kill you for years. And it would be really cool if they kind of reiterated the whole Joe's going to kill you scenario and played that out in WWE with the chance of Joe's going to kill you. Sold it on T-shirts like TNA did for years. That's why I'm hoping they don't kill the idea of Samoa Joe. Now, I know he's far from an Austin 316 and will never sell as many T-shirts or merchandise as Stone Cold Steve Austin or be on the cover of WWE video games like Warzone and Attitude like they were for years with Stone Cold Steve Austin, really driving home the issue of how Stone Cold was their biggest wrestler. It's going to be a long fucking time before we ever see Samoa Joe on a video game cover like he was for TNA Wrestling and going back through his TNA history. But the thing is, Samoa Joe could really sell merchandise if he sold the whole idea of Joe's going to kill you on t-shirts and WWE merchandise for figures and different things, finale, what have you, posters, which is why I'm really hoping they don't really jump to repackaging Samoa Joe and they really make the most out of this opportunity that they had, because without a doubt, without question in the back of anyone's mind, they have an incredible opportunity in front of them with Samoa Joe. But again, there are so many factors that could contribute to the downfall and the downward spiral that Samoa Joe could be on, and the biggest being WWE's track record with former TNA wrestlers like Chris Harris and Monty Brown. I mean, they've ruined them all over the years. I mean, who from TNA Wrestling really amounted to anything in WWE? A select few, Christian and Gail Kim, amounted to something after going back and forth from promotion to promotion. But wrestlers who ultimately came to WWE for the first time out of TNA Wrestling, I mean, nothing was really done with their characters. There are some that have been given the benefit of the doubt, but it's very rarely that we hear about how people have been given the benefit of the doubt from any other wrestling promotion, unlike WWE. Now, if you were loyal to WWE like Dwayne Johnson or Stone Cold Steve Austin, you were ultimately given the benefit of the doubt, and you were put over no matter how many times you would leave the promotion or return to the promotion after being gone for a number of years. God knows Stone Cold Steve Austin was Vince's favorite for forever, so no matter how many times he would quit and return, make so many returns over the years, he would ultimately be given the benefit of the doubt, and that would be jumping to a conclusion and playing favorites with your wrestlers. But the thing was, they were loyal to the promotion, and those who were only loyal were the ones who were put over. But those who would jump from WWE to TNA, they knew in WWE that these wrestlers were not loyal. They probably couldn't be trusted, so they were never given the benefit of the doubt, and that's ultimately why they destroyed wrestlers like Kurt Angle and Monty Brown. Although they allowed, the door was always open for Kurt Angle, he never did return because he knew what he was heading back to. And I don't blame Sting for almost tearing up the contract in front of Vince McMahon the night before WrestleMania, of course, a couple of hours before his match with Triple H. Of course, they wanted him to lose. He didn't want to lose his first match after not wrestling in WWE or working with them for years. He almost tore up his contract. They allowed for a documentary for WWE. I don't blame him. Of course, he's another TNA alumni who had the most done with him, of course, in TNA Wrestling. Without a doubt, those who have come from TNA Wrestling have seen far more success with TNA Wrestling and other wrestling promotions